Okay, so in your white paper, How to Save Your EHR, 6 Steps to Holistic Optimization, that's a mouthful, by the way. You talk about defining metrics. What are some of the key metrics that you see repeated among your EMR user base? What are the most effective? What are the least effective? What kind of advice can you give us in this metric area?
Well, let me just kind of break it down a little bit. There's a couple different areas to metrics, and metrics are a funny thing. There's so much that depend on them in an organization, yet sometimes they're the hardest thing to actually capture,
Sure.
especially on the EMR clinical side. I'm speaking from the clinical side since that's where I come from. At Hayes, the first thing that we always do is make sure that we know what the goal of the metrics will be. What are those metrics actually going to be used for? What's the importance of them, and how are we going to collect them? During an optimization, before we do the optimization, we actually make sure that we know what the goals are, what the metrics are going to be collected, and then most importantly, we spend time educating the staff at the organization that's going to be helping us gather that data, because that information that we collect has to be accurate, or it's not going to paint a clear picture. So some of the key metrics that we see repeated in our Hayes clients would be the patient visit time studies. How long are they? Is the patient at check-in versus with the nurse versus with the doctor, check-out, and how much time does that provider actually spend documenting? We all know the term counting clicks. It's become it goes hand in hand with the EMR. Sure. And really our clients are always looking for that. They want to know how many clicks does it take for a provider to get through an office visit, those sort of things. So organizations really want to know where the providers are spending their time, and how can we reduce the clicks, save them time, after hours time. These time studies can be very telling, and they're very important. And it really allows us to also identify any workflow or training gaps that may exist. When we're collecting these metrics and doing time studies, it allows us to see, where do they maybe need some training and that sort of thing. So we really need to make sure that we're going off more than just a feeling, and that we're actually painting a clear picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
When Angela and I go in and do some optimizations, we'll do a little training with them and we'll teach them, and they're like, oh, this is great, and everybody's happy, and they learn something new. But realistically, we need to make sure that we're gathering all that data and painting that clear picture for the organization, because that's really what they're looking for in the long run.
Sure.
Some of the most effective metrics that we see is when we can actually physically be on site to do those time studies. When I'm actually able to go and follow a patient through the office and see how much time they're actually spending with the nurse versus with the doctor, how the doctors are documenting. It's not one size fits all. Not all providers actually document in the same way. So sometimes those things are really hard to collect. The data for that. And so for us to be able to be there, and for Angela to see how much time they're spending at check-in and check-out, being on site and actually being able to do some of those time studies in person makes it so that it's more valuable to the organization.
Sure.
I'd say probably the least effective metrics that we see, at least on the clinical side from my point of view, can be some of the actual system reporting metrics.
Okay.
For the revenue cycle, some of the other areas, those metrics are golden. They paint a very clear picture. But for the clinical side, it's harder to do that. A lot of the EHRs or the EMRs now have, different appointment statuses that you can track a patient through the office. And we see people using those, and then they run the reports and say, oh, this is how long it's taking you to see a patient. But really, in all actuality, sometimes those people that are updating those statuses have no idea that they're even tracking something that goes into a report.
Sure.
So making sure that people know that they're participating in a metrics gathering or collecting data, and the importance of some of the workflows in the office that will support those metrics are extremely important.
Sure. Yeah, that makes total sense. And especially when they're system designed, take them from this status to this status, some of that can be deceiving simply because just in the workflow of how they take people into the office. That makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about how some of the metrics are gathered, it always comes down to the breakdown of the departments. Some of the quality measures, they want specifics, and your revenue cycle have specific things that they need, and then the clinical side and the clinical managers need specific things. So they're all looking for particular pieces of information, and really using that puzzle to put it all together for them to paint a clear picture sometimes can be rather difficult. We just make sure that we do good planning and make sure that we educate the staff when we're collecting metrics.
Good. Excellent.